Hello and welcome to our series on Excel. This is lesson number 9 and we're talking about conditional formulas today. Conditional formulas are probably one of the more frustrating things to use in Excel in my experience, mostly because they're kind of tough to get exactly perfectly correct right off the bat the first time. That's one thing I've noticed. I often have to basically look for errors in my logic in order to make sure the function works properly. However, the more you use them, the more or the less of an issue that becomes. Um, Basically, what we call a conditional formula is a formula which looks for certain things to be true or false, and then executes a command after the fact. So an easy way to think of that would be, for example, if we were to say, if we had a list of customers and we had a list of their eye colors, and we said, if count how many people who have blue eyes. So it would count all of the cells, but only if they had blue eyes listed in them. So for example, so it's kind of like that would be a sum function equals sum open bracket, but you wouldn't highlight everybody in the row because that would simply count everybody. And if you had, 4,800 or 8,400 or however many pieces of data or lines of data that we have in this document, it would be enormously tedious to just select all of the people. Now, of course, we could do a filter so that we could get a quick look and then do a sum, but it's not perfect. So we've looked already at how to do those using some absolute values and that sort of thing. But here's, pardon me, a little bit more of a powerful way, which in my mind is also a little bit more functional. So you should have a document that looks more or less like this. The title might be different. I may retitle this before dropping it into OneNote. But this is what we're going to use to practice. So make a page called Report 2 if there isn't one already, and copy this information in. So let's zoom in here. So we have a few different pieces of information we want to find out. We want to find out how many total orders were done by delivery truck. We want to find out what the revenue was, so how much money came in the door for orders done by delivery truck. We want to know how much money we made off of those orders and what the average profit was for those orders. And just last little thing, we'll try to find out how many orders did better than the profit margin or than the average profit, just to see if there are some outliers that are maybe changing our view of our income. So, total orders by delivery truck. Well, and maybe before we start talking about these functions, or before we start making these functions, let's talk about the different functions that we have. So one function we have is called average if, and maybe I'll do this in a spreadsheet here, or not in a spreadsheet, rather in a text box. So let's use a text box. So this would be a handy thing for you to do to take notes for yourself. But we have the average function. So you all know that the average function takes the average of all of the contents of a series of cells, or basically takes the average value of a series of cells. But sometimes you don't want to find just the average of those cells. You need to find the average of those cells as long as they meet some type of criteria. So this is called average if, right? And normally when we're typing in functions, we do it like that. So average if. So an average if takes the average value of a series of cells so long as they meet a certain criteria. Yeah, there we go. And then similarly, average ifs. Yeah, that's you wouldn't. Ifs is obviously not an English language word, but it makes sense from a programmer's perspective. It means that they're just going to be the same as average if, but using more than one criteria. Actually, I think that should be criterion, if I'm not mistaken. It's this singular version of that word. Whatever. Another useful one from time to time is the count if, or also count ifs. Basically, exact same wording, but we're counting cells which meet criteria. And then count ifs, you can have multiple criteria as well. You can use the sum if or sum ifs. Same business. So all of this if business is essentially the important stuff to know. So if, that's the one you need to know. Adding if to a function changes and increases the complexity of any given function. So if we go over into our orders here, and let's say I want to, let's just do a very, very simple one. So if we start with if equals if, we always have to start with equals. If this cell is, let's say, office supplies. So if P2, we go, so, and you can see here it says if logical test. Okay. If P2 is equal to office supplies, and I had to put them in, I had to use these quotation marks, and the reason for quotation marks is simply because this isn't a number and it's looking for numbers. So if it's anything other than a number, you just use quotations around it. So if P2 is equal to office supplies, comma, and you see how value if true suddenly got highlighted? Logical test, so that my logical test is P2 equals office supplies. If that's true, comma, space, it now knows that it's about to tell, or that I'm about to tell it what it should display if it's true. So I'm going to type true. And if I make a comma and a space and it says what should it tell me if it's false, so I'll type in false and close my bracket. And you see it says true. Now, just like with other expressions that we've used before, you can flash fill these downwards and you'll get auto-filling using the correct line. So basically what I'm saying is, if this thing is true, this is what I want it to display. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to say true at all. It could say monkey for all I care. Ooh, need a little bit of space there. Interesting. Monkey. Here we go. Had to use quotation marks there. It understands true and false, but it doesn't understand monkey and false. So as you can see, using expressions sometimes doesn't result in the correct answer the first time around. So yeah, but that's a very, very simple if equation. So I'm just going to delete those, and we'll talk about something more complicated, I guess. So we want to find our total orders. So when we're using different functions, the if clause can be we do the average, or we count it, or we do the sum only if the cell is, say, above or below a certain number, or if it falls within like a certain range, say it's 100 to 1,000, or if it contains a specific name or something like that. So we want to find the total orders, not like the value of the totals. We want to find out how many people ordered just by delivery truck. Now we could go, scroll over to shipping mode and have a filter that only shows delivery truck orders, and then we could count them if we wanted to, say by creating a sum. But of course we know that kind of breaks, especially because our row numbers are not continuous, are not a continuous series, and we don't want to reshuffle the data and everything like that. So this will be a much more organic method of counting cells, which will also allow us to function if the data in these cells changes. So we start off, we want to count, right? So since that's what we want to do, equals count, and it doesn't have to be uppercase. The equals sign is all we really need. And we want to say count if. Okay. And we open our bracket. And now it's asking for a range of cells. Okay. So we want to count these cells. So I'm going to start, I'm at the very top, click my first one, scroll to the bottom, and I shift click Express there at the bottom there, and now that's selected my whole range of cells. And you see how it says orders exclamation point H2 to H8400 because I'm making an equation in a different sheet from where the data is. Okay, so count if, we say count if that these cells, and I'm going to flip back over to report here. Oopsie, nope, didn't want to do that. I'll stick with report orders. There we go. Now I've gone and made a mistake. Let me just highlight that row again. I'll stay within my screen here. Okay, so count if, there's our range. I'm going to hit comma and space so it knows that I'm looking for criteria now. And I'm looking for delivery truck, right? I want to know how many orders were delivered by delivery truck. Now I can't just type delivery truck. Excel doesn't know what I mean by that. It thinks I'm giving it some kind of order. So I have to use these quotation marks to tell it to look for exactly this thing, this delivery truck. Otherwise, it's going to try to figure out if delivery truck is another command, and we definitely don't want that. And then we close our bracket. And you saw how when I closed the bracket, this bracket here bolded. It went bold for a second. That happens because it's showing you that this bracket is paired to another one and you've closed off the right one. Let me hit enter. It flips us back to our current sheet, and now we can see the total orders containing the word delivery truck, or containing the criteria delivery truck, is 1,146 out of the 8,400 that we have in total. Now I don't want to just copy this, because remember, if I copy this and paste it down here, all it does is it shifts the start and end cells. So we definitely don't want that. But what we can do is we can use the function box up here and to highlight the actual text that is contained in the function. So I'm going to hit Control C. Oops, don't want to do that. If you're up in here, make sure you hit enter or escape, otherwise you might modify your function. I hit Control V and enter. So now this is containing the same information, but what I really want to know is which ones contain regular air. So all I got to do is type in regular air, like that. And I can paste that same text down here and change it to express. Whoops, yeah. I have an extra K there, express air. Okay, so immediately we can tell that a disproportionate number of our orders are delivered by regular air. That's a very easy way to see that piece of information. Now we want to find the total revenue. So if we're finding the total of things, we found the number of things. Now let's find the total, how much income is coming off of, or how much money is coming in from orders done by delivery truck. So we're going to start with a sum function because we need to add a whole bunch of things. So equals sum if, and we open a bracket. We're going to head back on over to our orders page, and we are going to see it says sum if range. Okay, and we're going to use the H column because this is we want to know what's, or this is a silly way of saying it, but we want to use this as our criteria for deciding whether we add the information or not. So you see how it says range? This is the if range. The criteria we're going to have is what it contains, whether it's regular air, delivery truck, or whatever. And then sum range, that's the stuff we're going to add. So, shipping mode. Just click once, scroll to the bottom, shift click at the bottom. Then I hit comma, and now it knows I'm looking for criteria. My criteria is going to be delivery truck, once again in quotation marks. And then I'm going to place another comma, and now I have to define my sum range. I have to say what things it's supposed to add up. So we are going to, in this case, add up the, we want the F column, I should think. Yeah, sales. Yeah, total sales, because we're just looking for how much money changed hands. So we highlight the sales range, close off my brackets, and voila. That is a lot of money. That's a ton of money. We're going to change that over to dollars. That is $6 million, $6.2 million delivered of stuff delivered by truck. Okay, so now we can do this again, but instead of doing delivery truck, we are going to change our criterion to regular air. And this one is going to be changed to express air. So now we're starting to see even more patterns arise here. So if you look, we have 1,100 orders done by delivery truck versus 6,200 done by regular air. But those 1,100 orders by truck are worth pretty close to the same amount. You know, little more than $1 million less than the regular air, even though there's like 5 times as many delivered by regular air. That could be interesting information if we're trying to decide whether or not we want to continue using air delivery, or if we also want to charge additionally. So now we want to look at the total profit. Now the great thing is, because we just added all of our income off of those, all we need to do is change the column that we took our data from. So the total sales was the F column, and we want profit. We just want total profit, which is I. So all we're going to do is go back, copy our sum if, jam it into there, and we're going to change our sum range to I instead of F. There we go. There's our total profit off of things delivered by delivery truck, and I'm going to change these to dollars as well. And the changing to dollars also limits the number of decimal points that we're displaying. So we'll copy our sum, drop it down 1, change the criteria for counting it, and then we'll do that once more. There we go. Okay, starting to get a clearer picture of everything. So now that I see, although I've collected quite a lot more revenue, or very close to as much revenue with delivery truck, my profit is far better on regular air. So, but that's not per unit. You know, that's just total profit. So this is popular, but does that mean it actually makes as much money? So now we want to find the average. We want to find how much profit are we making per unit sold that meets a certain criteria. So we're going to use the average if function, average if. And our average if will look at, let's see, H. So we're going to use this to be our deciding point, right? How things are delivered is basically what decides everything. And we want it only if it contains delivery truck. So you can see I'm typing delivery truck up here. It's not highlighted or anything, but delivery truck. and we want to take the average of the profit line. So now you can see it says my range, my criteria. Now I want to find the average of a specific range. So average of profit, and we close our bracket, and there we go. We'll change this to currency also. And we'll copy, copy, paste, change our text to regular air, paste, and express air. There we go. So now we've actually found our profit per sale. So our profit per sale by delivery truck is actually $235.29 versus regular air, which is $176.19. So we're actually making really substantially better profit margin on our items sold and delivered by delivery truck, but we're doing higher volume. We're just making more money in general. Our actual profit by air delivery is 5 times that of our delivery truck. So we don't want to we wouldn't want to discontinue our regular air use, since although it impacts our average profit per sale, it means we're actually just making more money in general. So now we're going to use the COUNTIF function one more time, but we're going to use 2 pieces of data. So we don't want to just count orders that are by delivery truck. We want to count orders that are by delivery truck and are more than our average profit. So what we'll do here is equals average, but instead of average if, it's going to be not average, rather, instead of being COUNTIF, oh my goodness, spell please. It's going to be COUNTIFs, right? So we add that modifier to it. So COUNTIFs. So we have to find our criteria first. So our first criteria range is we have to find, let's see, where's our I column here? We have to find items based on their profit. Okay, and we want their profit to be greater than a certain number. So I shouldn't have done this by highlighting. That was a silly waste of time. There we go. So we want to know that this criteria, there we go, that's our I range. So we want to know that our profit is greater than, let's go back to our report. We want to know that it's greater than 235.29. Now, unfortunately, if I select my E2 block here, it's not going to work between sheets. I'm not exactly certain why, but we'll leave it for now and just go on. Our next criteria, so we want to know that, so first of all, like I said, we want to know that it's that the number is greater than this number, and we also want it to be by delivery truck. So we'll go criteria range 2, which is here. This time I will not highlight slowly. And we want that to be delivery truck. Close our brackets. And it doesn't like my equation. Something's wrong. So let's get rid of this bit because, oh, actually, well, we could also try adding quotation marks and see if that happens. And now it's just returning a 0. So something is going wrong in this calculation. So far in my own debugging, it seems to be something wrong with using a conditional format, or sorry, a conditional equation within this calculation. So instead, unlike everything else I've done so far, I'm actually just going to type in 235.29. And that gives us our total. So I'm going to copy my equation down. We're going to change to the average value for this type of sale, which is 176.19, and we'll change to regular air. last time. And there we go. So this could be another piece of information I want to look at. So 363 of my orders were above the average profit margin. But I had a total of 1,146 orders, which means that more than half of my orders are worth less than my average profit. Here, that is even more obvious. So I have over 6,000 orders by regular air. The average profit is 176.19, but only 114 orders were above 176.19, which makes me think that we have a handful of orders that are worth a lot of money because they're inflating the value of that average so much. And then same things going on here with Express Air. So basically these functions have allowed me to do some complicated, I guess, assessment of a really, really big sheet of data. Now, these if formulas can get quite complicated, and I want to show you one way in which I've used these formulas before. And we're going to be using this. We're going to be making something like this ourselves in the future. So this is an income calculator, and let's say you make $50,000 a year. What it does is it calculates how much money you have to give to employment insurance, Canadian pension plan, how much you pay to the federal taxes, and how much you pay to the provincial tax. And if you look, I've not only have an if function, I have an if function inside of an if function. This is called a nested function, and we'll talk a little bit about those. These are far more complicated, but extremely useful. I won't explain what they're about right now because, well, I just don't want to waste that much of your time. But essentially what I've created here is something very, very functional. I tell it how much money I make per year, and it tells me how much I get to take home. If that's not a useful tool, I don't know what is. But talk about if you have to budget your life, how much money you're making per month, how much is going to savings, how much is going to your car payments, whatever. This handy dandy number here tells you really everything you need to know. So anyways, we'll get into a document something like this in the future, but for now, that's all I wanted to do was talk about this. This is not an assignment, but I strongly encourage you to try doing everything that we've done here today. You really won't get the hang of this if you don't actually try it. So make sure you open this document up, follow along with what I was doing, see where I made mistakes, see where you make mistakes, and feel free to actually try working with some of these functions on your own. So that's it. Hope that this whole thing made sense and wasn't too rambly, and I guess we will see you next time with Lesson 10.